This video discusses on terminology and sources of data. Raw data is data that had not been processed. Internal data is data obtained from within the organization. External data is data obtained from other organization. There are two main sources of data. You can get data directly from the population elements or respondents under study. Under sources of data, this is known as primary data. You can also get data that had been documented by other researchers. Under sources of data, this is known as secondary data.
Primary data and how it is collected.
In collecting a primary data, the three most common types of surveys are 1. Mail surveys. 2. Telephone surveys. 3. Personal interviews surveys. Note that all of the surveys above involve in the design and administration of a questionnaire. Mail survey can be done by 1. Mailing the questionnaire to respondents. 2. Giving the questionnaire directly to respondents. 3. Emailed the questionnaire to respondents. Advantages of mail survey are: often lowest cost option. Expanded geographic coverage without increase in costs. Requires minimal staff. Perceived as more anonymous. Allows respondents time to think about questions. Allows contact with otherwise inaccessible respondents. Disadvantage of mail survey are: low response rate. No interviewer intervention available, for probing or explanation. Cannot be long nor complex. Accurate mailing lists needed. Often respondents returning survey represent extremes of the population. Telephone interviews of collecting a primary data. People selected to be the respondents are interviewed on the telephone by a trained interviewer. Advantages of telephone interviews are: lower costs than personal interview. Expanded geographic coverage without dramatic increase in costs. Uses fewer, more highly skilled interviewers. Reduced interviewer bias. Fastest completion time. Better access to hard-to-reach respondents through repeated callbacks. Can use computerized random digit dialing. CATI computer-assisted telephone interviewing. Responses can be entered directly into a computer file to reduce error and cost. Disadvantages of telephone interviews are: response rate is lower than for personal interview. Higher costs if interviewing geographically dispersed sample. Interview length must be limited. Many phone numbers are unlisted or not working, making directory listings unreliable. Some target groups are not available by phone. Illustrations cannot be used. Responses may be less complete. Primary data collected by personal interviews. The personal interviews is also known as a one-to-one or a face-to-face interviews, and it can either be 1. The interviewer go to the respondents, very common, or 2. The respondents come to an interviewer. This is usually done in institutions or organizations where the respondents are from the same institutions or organizations. Advantages of personal interviews are: good cooperation from respondents. Interviewer can answer questions about survey, probe for answers, use follow-up questions, and gather information by observation. Special visual aids and scoring devices can be used. Illiterate and functionally illiterate respondents can be reached. Interviewer can pre-screen respondent to ensure he or she fits the population profile. CAPI computer-assisted personal interviewing. Responses can be entered into a portable microcomputer to reduce error and cost. Disadvantages of personal interviews are: high costs. Need for highly trained interviewers. Longer period needed in the field collecting data. Maybe wide geographic dispersion. Follow-up is labor-intensive. Not all respondents are available or accessible. Some respondents are unwilling to talk to strangers in their homes. Some neighborhoods are difficult to visit. Questions may be altered or respondent coached by interviewers. Experimentations is also a source of primary data where researchers attempts to understand cause and effect relationships. This type of data collection is very common in the medical fields. Primary data can also be collected by observation, where data is collected at an event or activity where it occurred. Example: data are collected at selected junctions by observing the numbers and types of vehicles that pass through these junctions to justify whether traffic lights are needed at those junctions. Or, a restaurant owner observing the number of customers that visited her restaurant at any specific time so that she could predict the right quantity of foods to prepare.
Secondary data.
Secondary data refer to the data which have already been collected and published or unpublished by someone else. The secondary data are published data available in various publications of state or federal governments, various publications of foreign governments, technical and trade journals, books, magazines, and newspapers, reports and publications of various associations connected with business and industry, banks, stock exchanges, etc. Reports prepared by research scholars, universities, economists, etc. Public records and statistics, historical documents, and other sources of published information. Secondary data can also be the unpublished data from unpublished biographies and autobiographies, unpublished research works and other public or private individuals and organizations. Although by comparison, secondary data is usually cheaper than primary data, it may be inadequate in the context of the problem which the researcher wants to study. Thank you for watching.